Hello everyone, I'm Stephen Langley and this is my mechanics presentation video. So to start out, I want to showcase my grapple mechanic. The grapple mechanic is simple. You point and click on a grapple point and it shoots you straight to it. It shows a cable and it literally sends the player flying as soon as you let go of the right click button, of the right mouse click button. The cable automatically disappears and you start falling. So without further ado, here are the blueprints for that. So to start out, I went into the first person character, and right here we had the projectile. You go into the project files, you can add these kind of buttons. I just went ahead and just put grapple onto the right click before it was a fire projectile. I went ahead and disconnected that and came down here, and I made sure I got where the camera's location was, where they were pointing to, and I got that location. And if this was a true location, then you are able to move on and actually do the grapple. So I needed a break hit result to get to where the impact would be, which would be the grapple. So I set that as a variable. Once that done, I made sure that in order to grapple to it, it would have to be a class of a grapple P, which are those round little balls you saw me click onto. Once that is true, it sets the grapple point location, sets it to grappling, gives you the character movement. I went ahead and turned that into flying, so that way they could just be going right then and there towards that location. I set the cable to the visibility, and I also added a times grapple to show in the end-game stats that you go up one. I will get to that in the near future. Now, once the player right-clicks the mouse button and they start moving, I went ahead and I added the force down here. This is to where it gets basically the character's location, and it shows how much force you want to shoot towards that place that you're clicking on. I went ahead and made it to where it was kind of fast. I could have done this a couple different ways, but I found this was the easiest because all I needed to do was get the grapple locations, attach the cable to it, and pretty much after adding that, if it's set to isn't grappled, then he stops immediately and falls to the ground. As you can see, I added that also in it's released, set it to is not grappled, falling, set the cable 0. And that was a lot easier to do because once you go into here, I was able to add that cable right here. And I turned off the visibility so it wouldn't show, but I just kind of hooked it to his finger and just went here. Um, that's it for my grapple mechanic. Okay, everybody, this is my machine button BP. And this is the blueprint for the machine button. When the player comes up to the button, it will break an overlap thing. It's saying press E to activate. You press E, it slips to this hatch, it opens up, and the player can turn around and find a collectible to pick up after it drops out. There's actually 2 of these. I put another one over here that is actually able to activate, and it turns on the sparks for this diamond. So to see that up close, we'll go in here to the machine button blueprint, and this is what I did. So on the overlap, when the character walks up, I cast it to the first person to make sure, hey, is this overlapping? If it is, pops up this widget. Now this widget that pops up is the press E to activate button. I had set that. If it's valid, then it's going to remove that message after it's done, and I bound it to the interactive event. So after it's added to the viewport and it shows that E, and you press the button, it removes the variable once after it pushes the button. If you break out of the overlap volume, it also gets rid of that message as well, so you can back up and go into it all you. But once it's added to the viewport and the player presses the button, it removes that message, says, is it still overlapping? If it's true, then it's going to play the animation for the button to go down. So that button goes down. It casts to the first person because I want to see how many buttons have been pushed and how many machines are left in the in-game stats, which will be coming up in the next upcoming mechanics. So on that interact that I bound it to, this interact, after you press the button, it senses that it's a machine box BP. That machine box was the machine that you've seen open up the hatch to. It gets which array it is because I set them to 1. The button value and the hatch value was easy to set, so that way it knew which box to activate for the opening hatch. Once it found out that those both were true, then it opened the hatch and it actually blended with it and shot it to a different camera, which then showed the hatch opening up and everything like that. So for the next mechanic is going to be my platform. As you can see, you press E to move a lever, it goes down, and once you're down to the ground, the railing disappears so you can move again. So to see that, let's go in here to the level platform BP, and this is what happens whenever it triggers it. So when you pull that lever and you hit E, which is pretty much the same thing as my machine button is, if it's, if it's ready to go, then it does all this stuff and it adds the anim and all that kind of, the animation to the button going down and everything, only it's a lever. The lever moves and it goes like that. What I really wanted to showcase was my platform though. Once the lever hits on, it calls this on trigger event. This on trigger event notices which platform it's going to be, whether it needs to be called, and if it's the same and it's true, then it's going to play the animation for the platform down. Once the platform goes all the way down and it's finished, that's when the railing animation goes down itself. I was able to do this by putting some scene components in, and I just pretty much made it a parent to everything and also attached another scene component within that scene component for the railing. Now that was really easy to do. All I had to do was go in here, select them in viewport, make sure I knew which vents and railings they were, find out which of the Z's and locations that it would be at. Then all I had to do was import there and set the relative location to which one it was. After that, it was just a matter of calling it in the event on trigger event, and that was pretty much simple. If you need to take a look at the lever blueprint, show you what I was talking about. Like I said, it's pretty much the same. It's overlapping, pops up the message widget. Once it's done, it binds it, sets it to overlapping, and it moves the lever to certain degrees, and then that's when it triggers the platforms right here and does the on trigger. Okay, so for the last mechanic that I'm going to showcase is actually the in-game volume and in-game stats mechanic that are actually collected together. So once the player does the objective and finds the secret files, they will be able to escape the lab and do this little pop up the stats at the end. So once they get them and they interact with it, they have all these stats that pop up, tell them which path they've taken, how many times they've grappled, if they've grappled, and all that other stuff. So if they hit G, you can quit the game and we will see how these blueprints actually panned out. So what I did was I just set up a little in-game volume at the end right here that required files and stuff to be able to activate. If they did not have files, then it would play this need files message and have a delay on it to where it, destroyed it after a couple of seconds. They do have the files though. It stops the character movement and it pops up this in-game stats widget that you see pop up. Now the in-game stats is pretty much just a black screen that has all these on here as a widget, and these widgets are linked into the graph like this. I went ahead and I made these functions that have all of them in here. Let's take a look at the lab path right here. So the path that I created on the lab path, it was basically an overlap volume that casts to the first person and tells them that they've entered. Now once they've entered, it slashes over back to the in-game stats, and it lets you know which path you've taken by using these texts. These texts are set up just the way these others are. The X represents what the actual path name is and how many items they are found and everything like that. These are actually shown right here again by the X's and Y's. The Y's are how many is in the level. The X is how many the players picked up. If you go back into the lab path volume, you can see I added this variable right here that has a text. You can go ahead and enter which text it is once putting it onto the place that you want the player to go through. So like the lab path, the player will go through this way. Once he breaks this door by using a key, he breaks the overlap volume, and the overlap volume then has a lab path name, and as long as this name matches it, it will pop it up in the in-game stats. So this actually runs off of a lot of other things, like how many diamonds you have collected, and all this is found in the first-person game mode. All I had to do was find out which one it was, get the link, how many was left, and how many the total was. Stuff like that. It's just really simple stuff that I think worked out really, really good for me, and I hope you guys liked it as well. So, thank you.